Hi, Sav.
Hey, Alexis.
We are back today for another episode of Chrysalis Collective, the podcast. We're going to be chatting about spiritual bypassing, which is something that, as I've sat with it, not only do we do to other people, we also do it to ourselves. Like, there is very much a inward and outward relationship to how we view how other people should process things, you know?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like we're filming this episode on the verge of the total solar eclipse, and I feel like this eclipse season has required so much spiritual processing, and it's so easy to want to bypass like what's being asked of us, but the last couple of weeks have just required me personally to like sit in some serious darkness and sit with myself and like not bypass what I'm dealing with spiritually, and so I feel like this episode is coming out at like the most perfect time because we're all in a season of a little bit of chaos and confusion and restlessness. Like my sleep pattern has been really disturbed.
Why have I been waking up like literally? I cannot get a full stretch of sleep. I just keep on waking up randomly, and my dreams are still super vivid though.
Oh, me too.
Yeah, I feel like usually even if I'm waking up super often, then my dreams don't usually feel so vivid.
Yeah.
And it's like not the case at all.
I know what you're saying, because like I think I've been getting up at like 11 and 2 and 5, and then it's just been like so restless. But the dreams, like last night, my dreams were so wicked, vivid. I just could like describe them, like every single detail of the dream.
I literally had a dream about you having a big garden in front of your house, and you had like rows of corn and of squash.
Ooh.
Very specific.
Okay.
But it was like very vivid, and you were telling me like, yeah, we have enough. So I like it. I know.
I like Alexis's version of Dream Me.
I mean, the other ones I've had have been super weird.
Yeah.
I mean, that one kind of feels very random.
Yeah.
But the other ones I've been having are very just like, what? Like, I was fighting this man, because he was being very aggressive towards me and saying things about my car, and I told him I had a girlfriend, and then he got mad and started trying to like kick my car. So they've been also just like...
Yeah, a lot of confrontation.
Yeah.
I feel like we are being asked to not bypass, the heaviness, and not bypass things just because it's easier. Like with Chrysalis starting this business, it is easier for us to just like think about the possibilities and to think about the plans and what we want to create. But when seasons like this come up, like we are faced with so much, and sometimes you think that like you're gonna be tested on one thing, and you're like, okay, I'm ready to be tested, on this. I know
you can anticipate it a bit, kind of like, all right, yeah.
But then like the real test that comes is like the massive shadow test, and that requires an ego death to be like, I actually like am not where I thought I was, and not where I am claiming to be.
Well, and it's always interesting how those cycles come back, right?
Yeah.
Like we feel like, okay, we worked our way through it, it's good, we've come to this like totally, yeah, we're integrated, right?
Yeah.
And then like, no, because you're having to re-go through the same lesson. And I found myself specifically very much going into those spaces again and being like, oh, these feelings and these beliefs still exist. I got through it last time because Spirit gives me a lot of grace, but like I have to continue to live in my values and not spiritually bypass myself, because I think a lot of times I'm like, oh, I give myself grace and Spirit will give me grace. Yes, like that is true, but also I have to put in the work as well. I can't just throw out into the world, this is what I'm manifesting, and not put anything behind it. Like, I have to meet spirit halfway, and that's something that I'm just like, I can do anything, do all the affirmations,
right, exactly,
right, but like it only takes you so far.
Yeah, you have to be willing to put in the real work, and you have to be willing to accept what comes, even if it doesn't look exactly, like the way that you wanted it to look. Like, for me, the last month, I have completely had to essentially like rebuild my connection to my womb from scratch. And like, there have been days where I have felt so void and disconnected from it that it has, like, part of me has wanted to be like, well, just like forget all of it. Like, I'm gonna walk away from it. I'm gonna go like get a job in some data analyst, I'm gonna go like just get a job. I'm gonna walk away from all this.
The escapism.
Yeah, there's been a lot of like thinking about how much easier it would be if I didn't try to connect with myself in this way and connect with the wombs of others in this way, and like maybe I actually can't handle it. And also realizing like I'm putting myself out there, and I'm putting myself out there to help other people, but just because I'm doing that doesn't mean that I have to always act or always feel completely centered or aware or connected. That sometimes what the spirit is asking of us is to just be open about the fact that we struggle and we don't know. And sometimes, like, I recently felt like my womb was giving me some messages when in reality it was giving me other messages that put me in a position where I had to like really see what am I strong enough to do, and how much am I willing to listen. And I feel grateful like to have surrendered, and not like that I had to do a whole lot. I just had to surrender and let go and trust that I would get through the process, and I would come out the other side of it.
But that surrendering, there is so much shadow work that it pulls out of us, and really giving into that energy, like going into the unknown, and like thinking back on our past new moon circle, like sitting in the darkness, sitting with that unknown energy is extremely uncomfortable. Yeah. It is super, super uncomfortable.
And that's what the eclipse does too, is it brings out the shadow work, and it's doing the work in our dreams. And I feel like we should have a whole other episode on dreams, but I do feel like in our dreams, we are reaching a different level of consciousness, and we're able to sit with things that spirit wants us to sit with in order to prevent the bypassing that we are like more inclined to do in our conscious state.
Well, because the bypassing really comes from ego, and I think a lot of times control. we have a spiritual ego, right? Of like, oh, I've learned this, and I'm so much different than these other people and the lessons that they're learning. But we literally, at any given point in time, are literally just doing our best. Yeah. So we can't sit here and try to like have other people bypass their experiences and downplay their emotions and what they're going through, because I think that that's easy at times. I'm just thinking of a scenario when people say like pray about it, right? Like you're going through something, pray about it. And it's like that isn't what's conducive to healing and to a supportive environment. Like you're literally spiritually bypassing someone's experience and not letting them learn and get themselves through it. You just want people to get over it, and that's not the space that we want to hold for others.
Well, because we are divine iterations, and we have the capacity with our consciousness to create. And so like it's not just like surrender isn't just like letting it go or putting it off or not looking at it. Like real true surrender is laying yourself down and saying, I will do whatever I have to do to get through this process, and I'm willing to open up to something that's bigger than me. And also I feel like with spiritual bypassing in general, like they're even outside of like Christianity, that's like, oh, just, you know, let go and let God, or like, yeah, just pray about it. Like there is a whole other arm of spirituality that is very much like focused on love and light, or peace and blessing.
Yes.
You know?
Like positive vibes only, good
Exactly.
vibes only. Like if you're bringing your negative energy to me, then blah blah. Like yeah, that has no real space in healing. Like you can't heal coming from that kind of environment or perspective. Like all you're doing is pushing things under the rug, and that ultimately only leads the cycle to start back over again and come back in another iteration, and sometimes in ways that are tougher than we would have learned them the first time around. But I feel like it obviously varies on the lesson and whatever stage I've been in life, but thankfully I feel like the lessons have been coming back a little less each time. Like they're a little more like, okay.
Well, because your system knows how to handle it.
Yeah.
It's like spiritual bypassing like creates like spiritual constipation. Like you cannot release what's being stuck inside of you. You're holding on, you're struggling to hold on to it because you don't want to look at it. And so it's just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you can't like somatically move this through your body. But when you've trained your system to be able to surrender and to be able to sit with the darkness, like you're still going to have all of these things come up at different points in your life. Like you will learn the same lessons over and over again, and you will be confronted with the darkness. That's never going to stop.
Yeah.
And accepting that and loving that and like seeing that as a medium for growth and for an explosion of empathy and love is really that's all we can do.
Yeah, but when we're in the middle of it, it feels damn near impossible.
Yeah.
Like it feels like the absolute last thing. It's like the furthest thing in the back of your mind is that perception that we once held of how we know that these cycles happen and how things work. When you're in the middle of it, it's easy to spiritually bypass. It's easy to practice avoidance. It's easy to give in to, I'd rather not look at it right now. Like I don't know what's happening, and I'd rather not, honestly. Like,
I mean, and I think because like part of our culture has made it to where we don't have time for inconvenience. People are worked so hard, and they are part of, we talk about all the time, like the rat race and capitalism and all of these systems of oppression that have like created us to not be able to be fully connected with ourselves and with our spirit. And so if you're going through a trauma or you're learning a spiritual lesson, you still have to show up for work. You still have to go to the grocery store.
Exactly.
You still have to take care of your kids. And that's a reality for a lot of people, is that they have to spiritually bypass to survive.
Yeah, and I think that there is privilege in getting to sit with our emotions, or privilege in all of getting to have the space to use the healing modalities that are available to us. That there is a lot of privilege in that, for sure.
Absolutely, because for a lot of people globally, I mean, if you think about right now, the amount of violence and genocide that's taking place, like it's not necessarily just spirit that's being impacted, it's physical life. And so for many people in the world, it's not a possible reality. But for those of us who are able to work with spirit and to connect in that way, it's our responsibility to manifest something that liberates people. It's, your spirituality should not only be self-serving.
I think that's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, is how our ability to amplify our energy translates beyond us as a single entity, as a single expression of source. Like, we have to give and also put that out into the universe in a way that's intentional towards people that are not in the same position that we're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, what for you works for processing things spiritually, or how do you prevent kind of your spiritual bypassing?
I journal a lot. I journal every single day, and I think that that's made a huge difference in just like, there are things that are spiritual hygiene. Like, journaling is one of those things for me, meditating is one of those things for me, and affirmations. Like, I'm the person that will look myself in the eyes, in the mirror, and remind myself of things that I need to remember, that I feel like I need to do better at integrating. And it sometimes I'm better than others, definitely, but I think that is some of the things I know that are in my toolkit, as well as just like moving my body, like getting fresh air, going on a walk, like allowing myself to let go of all of the thoughts that are going on in my head and just be, walk, see, feel, hear, like really tune into the present moment has been things that have allowed me to not spiritually bypass, because I literally, like, I can't when you're
in it.
Yeah, making sure that you're connected and present, then you have nowhere else to go. You're right here.
Yeah.
You're back where you maybe don't want to be. And I mean, don't get me wrong either. Like, I definitely had a day recently where I was just like, I'd rather not deal with any of it. Like, why do I have all of this awareness? Like, God damn it. Awareness is only the first step, right? And I just like it's too much. I don't want to deal with it. I'm going to lay on this couch the entire day and do the absolute bare minimum. I'm just going to put food in my body and watch TV, because I need to turn my brain off and not do anything. Yeah. And sometimes those days, like, looking back on those days now gives me such a perspective of like, oh, like I give her a lot of grace because she needed it, and it was overwhelming. And sometimes, if that's what feels right for you, okay, give yourself that pause. But then it also, I feel like, gave me the space to remember, like, oh, I have all of these tools that I like, I know that I use and work for me and make me feel like so much more myself. So like, I should pick that back up, you know? And I think it's just a shift in perspective, because we're not perfect and we're constantly evolving in what is going to work for us. Like, at some point, maybe journaling and meditation isn't going to be my thing anymore. Maybe it's going to be freaking Tai Chi or something. Yeah. Like, who knows?
Yeah. And being willing to like be open and responsive to what's being asked of you and what your needs are too is a huge deal. And you should give yourself, you know, an infinite amount of grace to rest and to allow yourself to sit in that space of like not doing all of the things and just basking in that awareness, because that's really just being in awe of all of the awareness that you have and awareness of the spirit. So I love all of that, and it's amazing.
I'm curious as to what you feel like has worked for you.
For me, it's been a process. I think that my relationship to the moon is a big part of it. And feeling just very responsive to planetary consciousness and cosmic consciousness. And so looking outwards, not just inwards, not just thinking about like, what am I dealing with today? More so like, what is the universe dealing with on a cosmic level, and what part do I play in that? You know, where are all of these cycles and what's my role in them?
How is that expressing through me?
Exactly. And just being a conduit for that energy. We talked about it on the sex magic episode, but I do feel like sex brings up so much spiritual processing for me. Just being held in complete openness and complete safety to just allow emotions and memories and thoughts and feelings to move through my body. And then crying.
I love a good cry.
Yeah, I've been crying a lot more recently. And I don't really consider myself to be a big crier. I'll cry if I am really tired usually. That's when I'll start crying. But I've just been trying to let myself feel things and cry about them when I need to. But then going back to like all of the spiritual practices that you brought up, for me, I think a lot of it is creating a life that fuels my living in alignment. And having the things in my life just support my core values and support my beliefs, so that when I am in a position of more spiritual weakness or less ability to do all of the things that I normally want to do, that my life is already set up to help me get back on track. So, keeping the plants that are meaningful around me, or having my, yoga practice that I don't have any, I don't know how to do anything else. I'm not a runner, I'm not a swimmer, I don't do kickboxing. All I do is yoga and walking. And so having to go back to that physically, and having my kids who are such mirrors to spirit and who bring up so much, I don't have a choice but I do have a choice, but it will hurt them if I'm bypassing the lessons that are brought up to me, because my oldest daughter is 6.5, and for a long time, for about the first 3 years in my parenting, I really didn't know how to sit with the level of anger that she had. She was a very, very vocal about her feelings and emotions, and they would come out in a lot of rage sometimes, and they still do. And the older she's gotten, I can see it with her. She has actually developed a lot of beautiful coping strategies. But I had no idea how to really deal with this. And so what ended up happening was that my avoidance of her anger created a situation where she felt out of control because she didn't have a safe box for her anger. She just was allowed to do whatever her anger brought up to her, and would see me go meet her level. I would just meet the reactions that she would have. I wouldn't do anything to really give her constructive tools for her anger, because I was just so scared of it and so triggered by it. And it really just brought up a lot of defense in me. But I've had to be forced to sit with her anger, to love her anger, to see where it comes from, to see the maternal genealogy of rage and anger, and all of the women in my family who have struggled with their own versions of this in my daughter, and loving them, not turning away from them, not hiding from it, not rejecting it, not letting it be so big that it hurts me, that it hurts other people, or that it hurts herself, but giving her the space to process that anger and sit with that anger in her daily life has been huge for me, because it's shown me and illuminated within me what my spiritual relationship to anger is. And so I think having children really, really illuminates so many spiritual things for me, and they require me to just step up to the plate even if I don't want to.
And hearing you say that is something that I wish I had, especially for anger, because I think that now as an adult, I'm just well, I'm not an angry person, I'm so chill. And but what it turns into for me is resentment. I resent people very easily because I don't share my anger, and I spiritually bypass my anger so easily. It's counterproductive to the kind of family that I was raised in to be angry. It was always in my best interest to have people in the family be happy and content with my actions and what I was doing because I was an example, and the list can go on and on. Oldest daughter things. And so now, looking back on how I was raised, my teenager was very much super open and okay with expressing anger, but only to a certain extent. That's the most that I've ever allowed myself to really just be like, F you guys, like, I'm not having any parts of whatever, I'm just gonna rebel. And like, now I find myself having to tap back into my inner teenager whenever I am angry, and whenever I am noticing that I'm not allowing myself to have these feelings, because either I do that, or I always end up crying regardless, because one of the things that I learned in therapy was that anger is often a secondary emotion to fear, shame, or sadness. And so really giving myself that space to dig into what are you actually feeling, and I'm sure you've probably seen that with
absolutely I see that all the time with her, because she is angry, she's acting angry, but what she's really feeling is a lack of control in the situation, and needing control in a safe way. She can have a little bit of control in this situation in an age appropriate way, but we're gonna have healthy boundaries. Your anger is safe with me, I will take it. You can be angry, I won't let you hurt me. I won't continue to have conversations with you if you're screaming in my face or doing things that make me feel unsafe. I will have to walk away from that. But I love you in your anger. I'm not going to reject you in your anger. I'm going to sit here with you in it, and I'm going to give you, the space to be angry, and I'm going to give you control over your situation. But I'm also going to implement all of these other boundaries so that, your nobody else is hurt by your anger here. And I'm not going to give you more attention just because you're acting angry. So it's a delicate balance with children, because there have been times where I have gotten too angry with my kids, and I have so much regret when that happens. But my children are so forgiving, because I think they have been shown that they can sit with any feelings and thoughts and emotions, and we can always just come back, and we can always restart again.
That's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
Your kids are such sweeties. I can see why they are just more open and accepting to just being like, it happens.
Yesterday they one of the bigger things we've been dealing with, struggles, has been, this has nothing to do with spiritual bypassing, this is just parenting, but I'll tie it back, I'll find a way. They have really struggled with cleaning up toys, cleaning up messes, and I have been giving them the directive to clean, and they've either ignored it, or it just hasn't. They've really, really struggled with it. They've pushed back on
they're bypassing.
But I have gotten so angry with them, because I'm like, you're not listening to me. You're leaving a big mess. I'm having to now follow through with all of these different consequences that I didn't want to have to implement. But then I realized, oh, you guys have too much stuff. That's really the root of what this is. It's not your inability to clean. It's not your inability to listen. It's that you're feeling frozen in this situation. You have too much stuff, and you don't have a situation that's set up for keeping it maintained. And so having to look at myself and be like, where does my culpability lie in this? This is me tying it back to spiritual bypassing. It's easy for me to bypass my responsibility and to blame children or to blame somebody else for not, quote unquote, listening to me, instead of what is my role and responsibility here in this situation as a parent? What are my actual expectations? What should they be? And how can I support them so that we're meeting our goals? And so yesterday, after I took out 2/3 of their toys probably, and they're just sitting in the garage right now. They're not in the trash or anything, and they'll they'll like rotate back in the situation, but I sent them upstairs to clean up their room, and they were in there for 2 hours, which to me is too long to be cleaning. They don't need 2 hours to do it. In my brain, it should take 15 minutes. But I didn't bother them. I didn't go up there and like tell them they needed to be moving faster or anything like that. And at the end of the day, I went upstairs to their room, and their room was as clean as they could have made it, probably. And I was like, you guys did a really good job. I'm really proud of you, you know. And my daughter was like, yeah, it's a lot easier for us to work when you're not yelling at us. I was like, I agree with you. It is. And I'm going to work on that. And so I guess my point to all of this is just that spirituality and processing these lessons, because anger for me is a massive generational trauma to sit with, and I have been traumatized by my mother's anger and my grandmother's anger, and I am forced to sit with anger in my own house and family. And so learning how to love it and show up with grace and compassion and empathy towards anger, and not just passing over it or feeding into it.
Yeah, I think giving it that space, and giving every emotion that we have that space, and our shadow aspect that space, like that's something that we have to do in order to really integrate the lessons that we're being asked to receive and to sit with.
Yeah, let the universe do its work. And that's what we're really doing with our moon circles. And our next moon circle will be we're going to do it the day after the new moon, after the eclipse. The portal will still be open.
Yeah, we'll still be feeling the energy for sure.
We'll still be feeling it for a little while, so just keep the faith. You'll get through all of this. So hopefully if you're in Houston, please join us for our next new moon circle on Tuesday, April 9th at 6 p.m.
Yes.
And then we have a lot of other things coming up.
We have our community womb wellness workshop that we'll be hosting at Heart of Houston on May 25th. So that's coming up in, we're in April?
Yeah, May 25th.
Yeah, the end of next month. So that's something that we get to hold space and connect with other people that have wombs in a way that honors the womb is the creative life force, and we'll be doing art, we'll be meditating, we'll be journaling, we'll be storytelling, we'll be feeding our inner child. So
learning about the cycle as well, and ways to connect intuitively with your womb at each phase. And so you can go to our Instagram at _Chrysalis_Collective, and you can register with the link in our bio. Our website is still under construction. We are building that, and it will be out by the end of the month, so be on the lookout for all of our offerings that you'll be able to register for on our website. That's exciting. But you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you can subscribe on YouTube. It would mean so much to us if you would leave a review, leave a rating here. It all helps the algorithm. Share the podcast with your friend. We would love to reach more listeners. So thank you for joining us here. I am Savannah Taylor.
I'm Alexis Ramirez. Until next time.